Patana? And I looked up, and there was a yellow-robed monk who spoke English, standing in charge of the bookstall. He was kind of red-eyed. And I looked at him and said, well, not exactly. I practice Zen. Oh, Zen, not Satipatthana. Well, I said, it's all kind of the same thing. It's like yoga. No, Satipatthana, not yoga. Now, listen, I said, you Buddhists are supposed to be open-minded and to believe that there are many, many ways of realization. No, Satipatthana, only correct way. Well, I said, you talk like a Roman Catholic. They say they have the only true way. I said, you know what you're like. You've got a ferry boat concession. A ferry boat concession to take a ferry across the river. And a few miles down the river, somebody else opens up a ferry boat. And you complain to the police and the government. Say, he shouldn't open up because he's in competition with me. Now, the truth of the matter is this. I'm talking still about the economics of spirituality. In London, there's a street called Harley Street, where every eminent physician and surgeon wants to have an office. This was years ago. And so Harley Street became completely full with physicians and surgeons. Well, you would say, naturally, they were all in competition with each other. But nothing of the kind happened. They all became equally prosperous. So that they had to open up Wimpole Street, which was the next street to Harley Street. And when they had filled that up, they opened up Welbeck Street, which ran along next to it. And when they filled that up, they got Queen Anne Street, which ran parallel. And the whole area is nothing but physicians, surgeons, and dentists. And they are all fantastically prosperous because they've got the right address. See, once you've got into Harley Street, you're there. So it's like you're a guru, and you set up in Sausalito or Big Sur or Hollywood, whatever, you know, you're in the right place. And we can take any number, and they're all, the more we have, the more prosperous everybody will be. This is the economics of plenty. And it's all based, you see, if you really work it right, it's based on a big turnover. You don't try to capture people. You don't try to make them faithful to you. You don't want to tie them up. But you see, if you do that and you set them all free, you really get them going. That's what you're supposed to do. That's your job, to liberate. And then they're grateful and they send their friends to you. So, the craft of mysticism you see, I just want to be very frank with you because, after all, you pay to come to these seminars. And in India, it's considered very, very immoral to ask for money for spiritual teaching. But that's a different culture from ours. In the United States, it would be immoral not to ask money. Because in the United States, people disrespect anything they get free. And they have to give money as a token of their sincerity, just as, say, in India or in China, you have to give something else. You have to wait a long time. You have to be persistent in token of your sincerity. But in this country, the hang-up is money. So naturally, one asks for money. A person like myself only needs a relatively small amount of money. And so, if you make an awful lot of it by being a successful guru, you give the rest away. Or do something creative and imaginative. Allen Ginsberg has a foundation. He makes a great deal of money by being a crazy poet. And he gives all that he doesn't need to help other poets. So then, the point I'm making is this. Meditation, you are not trying to gain anything, to alter your state of mind from what it is now into some other state which you think it ought to be in. You are centering in where you are. But you see, the difficulty for us with this is that we do everything. We even eat, we play, we dance, under the fundamental assumption that all this is good for us. We go to concerts to improve our culture, to the theater, to the movie, in order to be able to say we have become more educated. We have improved. And as a result of this kind of motivation, we don't really do those things at all. If you go to the concert to become more cultured, you are not really listening. So meditation, above all things, because it's got a slightly disciplinary flavor to it, a slightly religious flavor to it, is something that people use somehow to get ahead in the game of spiritual one-upmanship. And I get sick and tired of people who go and study Zen and come back and brag about the long hours of meditation they put in and how much their legs hurt and what a great ordeal it was and how good it was for them and how you who haven't gone through this discipline are a kind of underling. See, I've had this put on me for years because I didn't go to Japan and didn't sit around in zendos and worked it my own way. And they say, well, you're just a dilettante. You see, you haven't suffered as much as we have. And you really ought to suffer. You ought to put up with those long endurance tests. Now, the reason why in meditation one sits in a certain way, whether you sit like I'm sitting now, or whether you sit in the lotus posture, your legs become a little uncomfortable. And the reason for that is not self-punitive. It's merely that it helps you to stay awake. That's all. And if you were floated in a hot tub with supporters in a completely dark room, in a sensory deprivation chamber, you would very likely go to sleep. But the point in meditation is to be wide awake, without, however, the intellectual chatter going on in the head. And so a posture which involves a very certain subordinate degree of discomfort keeps you awake. Actually, when you get used to sitting this way, I can sit this way without extreme discomfort for at least 40 minutes, even longer. And it becomes natural. But as I explained, the point is to be wide awake and aware of your total sensory input without confusing it with the symbolic world of words and concepts, so that you experience life naked and directly. Experience you naked and directly, without having in your head the concept of who you are as a role player, as a personality, as an ego. And this becomes, in due course, a very pleasant thing to do, so that meditation becomes not something that you put in so much time at, like you might put in time in a jail, but becomes a pleasure. Of course, from the point of view of our religion in the United States, that's almost sinful. Religion isn't supposed to be a pleasure, because it's supposed to be joining with Christ in suffering on the cross. Look, there's enough inevitable suffering going on anyhow. You're going to die one of these days. Everybody encounters difficulties in their lives. You don't need to go out of your way to seek them. So now, there are two fundamental approaches to meditation. One, you see, this morning, Charlotte was getting us to bounce on our heels and to stretch as tightly as we could to overcome gravity. And then after that, she said, see what happens when you don't do it. So one of the methods of meditation is to stretch as tightly as possible, to concentrate with your whole energy on a point, and to use the maximum amount of effort. You say in yoga there's an exercise called kumbha, which is a way of breathing, which is it's a kind of force, holding the breath as long and as tightly as you can. That was like the stretching we did. That's like those people who, say, in the Tendai temple up on Mount Hiei over Kyoto, who practice bowing. Thousands and thousands of bowings. They stand up, they kneel down and prostrate themselves on the floor, get up again, stand up, kneel down, prostrate them on the floor. And there are those Tibetan monks who do the Lungompa, running through the mountain trails with enormous leaps. And they do like Nijinsky could do those leaps where, you pause a little bit in the air and seem to overcome gravity and then drop again. And they go on and on and on, bouncing along a road. Or there are other pilgrims who prostrate themselves at every step, traveling a long journey. There are people who run the streets of Kyoto, 100 miles through the streets of Kyoto every day at a jog trot. There are all kinds of things like that where you work yourself to a limit in struggle. Because in doing that, you get a thing which runners call second wind. And second wind in running is where you are no longer running, but it runs you. Where, in other words, the ego energy in the running is displaced and the energy of the whole organism takes over. And that is all the energy of the whole universe. When you get second wind. So you get second wind in this fierce kind of meditation. Alternatively, there's another way in. And in this way is a kind of so-called easy way. And one uses it for a different type of personality. There are certain people who must have the difficult way because they don't know they exist unless they're sitting on a spike. And those kind of people who don't believe they're real unless they hurt have to follow the difficult way. But there is a subtle way, which is the Taoistic approach, wherein instead of trying to master and dominate your body-mind, you let go of it. And you let it do whatever it wants to do. Let's suppose, for the sake of example, for a moment, you just close your eyes and allow your eardrums to respond to any sound going on. There are no proper sounds or improper sounds. You may feel free to shift, shuffle, cough, sneeze as you will. Don't try to identify, locate, or name the sounds that you hear. Just let the rippling air play with your eardrum. And as you hear the sound of my voice coming across to you, listen to what I have to say simply as tones. Your brain will take care of understanding. You don't try to understand. In other words, allow your ears to hear anything they want to hear.
Where's your playlist taking you? Down the highway? To the mountains? Or just into daydream mode while you're stuck in traffic? With over 4,000 hotels worldwide, Best Western is there to help you make the most of your getaway. Wherever that is. Because the only thing better than a great playlist is a great trip. Life's the trip. Make the most of it at Best Western. Book direct and save at bestwestern.com.
Stay so marvelously different. That's why the Buddhists say, difference is identity. Identity is difference. It sounds goofy, but it makes a great deal of sense, because what it's saying is a relational thing. That you don't know what identity is unless you know what difference is, and you don't know what difference is unless you know what identity is. That relationship between so-called opposites is called in the Chinese technical Taoist vocabulary mutual arising. So they say to be and not to be arise mutually. High and low are mutually posited. Long and short are mutually delineated, and so on. Now, what we see then is the totality of the cosmos focused at each point, you see, gives rise to the illusion of the independence of the point from the whole. Just as the human being, by virtue of having an enclosed epidermis, and to be able to walk instead of having to be rooted to the ground, presents the illusion of being separate. And so that's why I asked Vada to do these demonstrations last night, because he showed visually the interdependence of the figure and the background, and how the two play together, how you can switch from paying attention to one to paying attention to the other, and in each case it's significant. That is an art that we have lost in our day-to-day perception of life, and it leads, practically speaking, to the serious problem of ecological blindness. That is to say, to the ignorance which most human beings seem to suffer from, especially in our culture, that they are inseparably related to their physical environment. It looks as if we aren't. It looks as if we can go out with bulldozers and insecticides and every kind of a gadget and make over our physical environment as it suits our whims. But then we discover to our consternation that we've upset all sorts of balances. That the house we made such a nice flat lot for on the hillside suddenly slides down the hill when there's a rainstorm because we took away all the shrubbery that was binding the hill together. And you know, this happens in Hollywood every day. And and nobody ever seems to learn.
For being against Christ the King.
And that's, you see,
saying Christ the King is anti-Semitic, and she was getting criticized by Jews as an anti-Semite immediately. This is about 14 months ago. She says, no, I'm not an anti-Semite. As soon as you say that, the Jews got you. Because they will keep on saying to you, but you say this, you do that. You said this the other day. This was your position 3 weeks ago. You are an anti-Semite. There's no way you can get out of that trap you put yourself into. As soon as you get defensive with the Jews, they will keep on nailing you. So I said, people, don't trust this woman. Then when she was called out again, and at some debate where she said, well, you keep on accusing it's the Jews. You sound like a broken record. She says, no, it's not really the Jews, it's the Frankists. I mean, this is just laughable. But I don't want to get into the Frankists. They were just a fringe group, and they didn't last long. Nobody ever heard of them, so all of a sudden it's the Frankists. Now, as far as her not wanting to come on with Nick Fuentes, I will give you the very practical reason that she will not do it. Because she will lose her YouTube account. That's why. Okay, that's all I have to say.
Wait, real quick. So you're the dude in the picture, right? And you're him?
Are you him?
This is me. I do streams all the time. I do videos all the time. This is me.
That's dope. He's in here.
One second, bro. You are very excited. Welcome to JQ Radio, guys. We have a lot of very awesome guests.